I've learned that failure is a big part of how success looks like. We knew this is going to be a huge part of our DNA of the company, just embracing failure and knowing that failure is a key part of building a successful company.
I'm Amy Jo Martin. Welcome to the Why Not Now show. You know that thing you've been thinking about doing? Yeah, that one. Why not now? Have you ever actually taken the time to ask yourself, what's stopping me? Let's talk it through. This is your chance to give that idea the attention it deserves and take action. Each episode, I have a chat with a fascinating person, from entrepreneurs to athletes, celebrities, my parents, rocket scientists, and all walks of life. We talk through a critical time when they've asked themselves, why not now? We dissect that day or even that moment, step by step.
Just let go.
Hello, everyone. I am recording today from Crater Lake, Oregon. In the RV, we've set up the Why Not Now studio here in Renegade, our RV, and we're continuing to experiment with this RV living. If you missed what this is all about, you can get the entire scoop about how we sold our home and we started traveling with our 1-year-old. It's a couple episodes back, and we actually share the 5 Renegade rules in how we got here. So we will give some updates. We're going to record another podcast soon that kind of shares how things are going on the road, what we're learning, what the lifestyle's like, and all the goodies. So know that that's coming. But today we have a very special guest. I am so excited about this conversation because I've been thinking about it ever since we spoke. Eran Zinman is on the show, and he is an incredible businessman. And his approach to problem solving is extremely unique. He is the co-founder of Monday.com, which has become wildly successful in 5 short years. They've grown from 0 team members, employees, to 600. And they're at $170 million in annual recurring revenue. It's incredible. And the reason is because Monday.com is so much of a problem solver, right? I am not shy about my love and affinity to Monday.com. That's definitely not a secret. You've heard me probably talk about it before. But the reason is because it really has changed my days. And in this conversation with Eran, of course, we touch on Monday, but we explore a lot deeper into what he's learned about entrepreneurship, because his why not now moment was actually a moment when he decided to stop and close his first startup. So think about that. Sometimes a why not now moment isn't just to start something, it's actually deciding to stop something potentially. So Eran starts off with that, and there are so many gems in this first story in terms of what he did differently the second time around, what he felt like the problem was. He was afraid of failure, 100%. He says it. Also, Eran talks a little bit about this approach to problem solving and kind of a reframe that he refers to as changing the playground, right? So this is something I've been thinking about ever since we spoke, and changing the environment that challenges or problems reside in can make a huge difference. And he talks this through. There are so many gems, tips, tricks, things that he does that you can do and apply to your own business. Or if you're working for a company, if you're in the corporate world, it isn't just for entrepreneurs. One of the things that is so unique about Monday.com is the internal culture. I can feel it because I've been able to interface and really kind of interact with quite a few people. It's the type of brand that just brings a smile to your face. And I'm guessing one of the reasons I feel that way is because behind the scenes, there's so much transparency, and the team is on the same page at all times in terms of numbers. They are very transparent with their numbers. There are some tactical things that they do every day. And for example, sending out a text message with updates on revenue and metrics and data for everyone in the company. Can you imagine? That in itself is just alignment immediately right out of the gate. And I think they're really leading the way with a unique, progressive way to scale a company. This has gone from nothing to a huge valuation in less than 5 years. So yes, we cover so many different things in this episode, one of which is some of the quirky ways that I use Monday.com, using it for this road trip. For example, every single stop and every single detail is in there. I use it personally, professionally. And so you can get a better idea of kind of what it is and the genesis. I know I took copious notes during this conversation, and I think you probably will too. Hit me up on social and let me know what you think of the conversation, and enjoy. How we spend our days is how we spend our lives. For me, being able to design my own day is a non-negotiable. As many of you know, I'm a bit of a time management nerd. So when I find something that allows me to be more efficient and more effective, I want to share it with everyone. So here's the scoop. I have a new tool in my productivity tool belt, and I'm a bit obsessed. It's Monday.com. My team and I have never felt more organized, and I have a new sense of perceived control. My to-do list is no longer the boss of me. I feel more in control because every project, initiative, date, and task is captured and organized in one place. And my team is in the loop and involved every step of the way. With Monday.com, it's like I have a brand new operating system. There's no long list, and everything has its own home, its own deadline, its own team member that's assigned and associated, and it's color coordinated. We all have multifaceted jobs and businesses. There are many components to my business, and each and every one of them has its own compartment. Each division is always one click away. For example, my team and I have a dedicated board for this very podcast. Did you know there are 28 steps involved in getting one podcast to air? It's the same exact process every time. And it's a system. We have the various key steps mapped out as micro tasks. And this allows for my team and I to stay in lockstep every step of the way. With Monday.com, I can zoom out and see the big picture, a roadmap view from 30,000 feet. And a moment later, I can zoom in and focus on a specific micro task within a project, within a division of the company. I could go on and on about the features that Monday.com offers, one of which is I've built my social media content calendar inside of Monday.com. I finally have one that I actually use, that I like, and it's embedded into my overall Google Calendar. Another feature that I love is the Google Doc integration. You know I love a good spreadsheet. I can pull them into Monday.com and edit them right there versus having 97 tabs open on my computer. If how we spend our days is how we spend our lives, then I can't think of anything more important than using the time in our days wisely. Head to Monday.com if you want a free trial. And let me know on social media how it goes for you. Shoot me a DM. We can swap tips and tricks. Eran, welcome to the Why Not Now show. I'm so excited to have you join me today. And in the spirit of Why Not Now, can you tell me about a time when you had a big decision to make and you asked yourself, why not now?
Yeah, so basically, I've been, using computers since I was very young, and I actually started writing code when I was 8 years old, as weird as it may sound. Yeah. And I always knew that I wanted to do things with computers, but only later on I fell in love with building products and build the stuff that people really like. My first My first real startup was, I was about 24, 25 when I started my first company. It was a company called OtherSay. We basically built a search engine for user reviews. So the idea was to collect user reviews from around the web, just reviews about anything you can think about, and build some sort of a search engine to allow people to search online for anything. And it was my first startup, my first experience of trying to build a company. And I've made so many mistakes in that journey that it's hard to count. But I feel kind of my main one was that I've built a product that no one really wanted to use. And I invested so much in the technology and thinking about how this will scale and a lot of other things. And I didn't validate the product and the need for the product only until really later on. And I got to a point in my personal life where I've lost all my savings, had any capital invested from the outside. It was basically me and my partner. And, it had a huge impact on my life, on my day-to-day. I knew that something is wrong. For a very long time, I had this feeling in my stomach. But I remember that specific day where I said, no more. I can't do this anymore. And just, on that day, I made a decision to quit and try to do something else.
Oh, man. I can only imagine. You talked about that feeling of you just knew something wasn't quite right. You could kind of feel it. And as an entrepreneur who now, with Monday.com, your growth is just off the charts and what you're experiencing. And it sounds like you started with the problem solution this time around. But as an entrepreneur, how do you discern between something's not quite right versus we need to just push on and push through and stay committed to the vision, and this is a bump in the road? Like, how do you tell the difference?
It's a great question, because I think, one thing that I think a lot of entrepreneurs have in common is this grit, this, push forward, yes, positive attitude. Everything is just a bump in the road. And also with my first startup, I had this feeling, but I lacked the opposite side of it, which is, the feeling of progress. I had the lows, but I didn't have many highs. At some point, I realized that there's something I don't understand. There's something I'm missing. I have a huge blind spot, which I don't see. And I just felt I don't have the tools to push forward anymore. There's something I need to understand before I can succeed with my startup, any startup this will be. When I started my first company, I was sure, I'm going to conquer the world. It's going to be the next big thing. The difference between the reality and what I started with was totally different. And it was a humbling experience going through this period. When I've decided to close my first startup, I didn't go to start a new company. I said, there's something I need to learn. So I went to work at a company called Conduit. It was a big company back then in Israel, in Tel Aviv. And my goal was to learn what I don't know. I didn't know what it is exactly, but I knew that I want to go through this journey to understand what I need to learn.
Wow. What you said about there's something I don't understand. What a great question for us to ask ourselves if we're in that spot where we don't necessarily know. Is this a make it happen, or is this to ease up and let things happen as they should? What a great question. Is there something I just don't understand? And so you set out to go and learn that. This is so key, I think, especially, I'm in the U.S., you're in Tel Aviv in Israel, and I imagine the romanticism around entrepreneurship is similar. I'm not sure. You correct me if I'm wrong, but as an entrepreneur myself who works with a lot of others in their beginning stages, I know that, sometimes we glorify this process of starting a business and it looks so neat. It sounds neat. We're raising money. And it's actually like this first story of yours. It sounds like, what the reality is this is very hard actually, right? And it's personally so much pressure. So your personal world in life, it sounds like, really was impacted by that first experience.
Yeah, definitely. So I've mentioned the financial side, but I specifically remember one meeting with an investor. I was so excited about it. I prepared this beautiful presentation. I haven't slept all night, or at least part of it. And the meeting was very short. It was late. It just ran through the slide, click space, 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 space. It's not going to work. That's it. Bye bye. And I remember myself walking back home, lying on the bed with a terrible migraine. And that feeling of failure is something that had a huge impact on me. And one of the lessons that I've learned in retrospect about that period and the way I've built the product, and one of the key learnings that I personally had was that I was afraid to fail. And what I found out is that being afraid to fail is one of the best ways to fail, because you're afraid to take risks. You try to work too hard because you think about what people are going to think, what people are going to say. Is the product good enough or not? And I've learned that failure is a big part of how success looks like. It's a big part of making a successful company. And when Roy and I, my partner, started Monday.com, we knew this is going to be a huge part of our DNA of the company, just embracing failure and knowing that failure is a key part of building a successful company.
Let's transition into that next phase, and I'm so glad that you brought that up. I was afraid to fail, and that's one of the best ways. Can fail, is what you said. Oh, so good. So the co-management with Roy, your co-founder, and just this concept and doing a little bit of research, it sounds like you have a long history together, but how did the idea spark? Right? Was that another Why Not Now idea, where it is no secret to anyone that listens to the podcast that I'm a big fan, and really it's changed my life because there's a perceived sense of control I have over my day now with Monday. But how did this, we talk about problem solution, where did this start for you?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think that's kind of another moment of why not now. So Roy and I, we know each other way back for about 15 years now. We also kind of have the same story. So we were both entrepreneurs. We both fell with our companies, and we both went to work at big companies afterwards. So I worked at a company called Conduit. Roy went to work at a company called Wix, which has been super successful since then. And we both knew that we want to build another company. We just, it's going to be together. I think what happened was that both of our companies, both Conduit and Wix, had an amazing period of scaling the company. So both companies were very successful. My company grew from 50 people to 400 in 2 years. And I think Wix had kind of the same journey. And we kind of met occasionally every once in a while and discuss about difficulties of, how to manage a team, how to harness everybody towards the same goal, break silos and improve communication. And we got kind of frustrated with the tools that we had. So I was using a bunch of tools. I was managing 5 R&D teams at the time, and Roy was managing teams at Wix. And I've been using different software to do so. And I got frustrated. It wasn't because of the tools. The tools themselves were great. But I went through this conscious journey of picking one tool, then needing to replace that once my team scaled or once we changed the way we work. So we moved from one tool to another, and then this whole process of readopting, educating the team on how to use it, and basically taking the team and trying to adopt it to the tool and not the other way around. So we kind of sat down and we said, we need to find something else. This is a huge opportunity for us to build a new company where we give the power to our users. We want to, in a way, democratize software and allow our users to build their own tools rather than the other way around.
Yes. And it's fun, right? And it's pretty, it's simple and easy. And yes. And I think you've nailed it in terms of there's an empowerment where I know when I'm using Monday, there are features or functions that I'm like, gosh, I really wish I could. I wish I could, add XYZ. Usually I can. So that's what's so cool about it. I guess when you look at, the space wasn't new per se. I have a lot of entrepreneurs say, I have this idea, but it feels too much like these other ideas, right? So did you have that tug at you as far as this already exists? It didn't necessarily in the form that you wanted, but did you feel like the space was too busy and have that whole, conversation?
Yeah, it's a great question because I get a chance to meet a lot of entrepreneurs who try to build new things, and a lot of people's intuition goes towards, I want to find a new idea that no one have ever thought about before. And I think that it's not the right approach. Ideas are important, but execution and finding opportunities in the market and trying to solve a real problem is much more important than finding an idea that nobody executed. I think that finding a market that's crowded but doesn't have a very clear winner is a great place to spot an opportunity. And when Roy and I look at the market, we said to ourselves, there might be a lot of software out there that helps people manage, whether it's framed under task management or project management or any other variant of that. But at the end of the day, what's the go-to solution for people? Is there one clear winner that we're going to say this will be the dominant tool for people to manage their processes, their project, their tasks, their day-to-day? And when we observed the market from that perspective, the answer was no. If you look at the CRM market or sales management, Salesforce is obviously number one and scaling very rapidly. But when you think about all the vacuum of how people manage their processes, how people manage their day-to-day, how people manage their teams, there's not one solution I can point to and say this is the solution. So we said, this is a huge opportunity for us. It's a huge market. There's a huge vacuum. We can build a big company out of this.
And you've definitely done that. I think it's so interesting about the original idea concept, because I think we get so focused sometimes on it's got to be original and different, and there really aren't too many original ideas in here, right? It's always a twist or the consumer journey, or there's a lot of different ways to differentiate too. So I just have to share with you a couple of ways that I'm using Monday, because I think they're a little bizarre, but you've probably heard it all. And I would love to hear what is kind of the most interesting case study or use case. So obviously for business, and we have all of our different, divisions of the company, and I can really relate to what you said before about when you have to change a team from one software to another. I used to have an agency, and we had employees in 10 different countries, and every time we would go with anything new to roll out, it was like, everybody just shook their head, and they were waiting for the grueling just process of transition and education, and it's like, no, stick with me. So I totally get that, because it is time and energy and resources to do that, right? But we have a fairly small team right now. And so we have our little cubby holes, for our different divisions of the company. I think of it kind of like kindergarten. And it's amazing. Like this podcast, it's the same exact process every single episode. And there are a lot of steps, right? This is one. This is the key. But there's so many things that go into this. And we're in lockstep with our editor and our producer. And it's just, we copy paste into the next board, and here we are. So we've been using it for this road trip we're on. We were just talking earlier, and every single stop has its own dedicated, time and attention that integrates with our master Google Sheet. And that's one of my favorite things, is that you've built in integration where we can edit within. But when we set out on this trip, there were 97 million things that we had to do to get ready for the RV. We've never had one before. So all these different things, as well as we're selling our house, and my husband and I work together too. So our world is in Monday, and there's just a perceived sense of control. As I'm writing my second book, it's all in Monday, right? So I think it's fully encompassing, right? It's like my friend. And so I really have to hat tip you to building a brand it's welcoming, and it's so simple, yet it's a big part of making my day better, right? So what are some of do you hear of many people using it, personally? And I know small teams is a big deal, but even individually, I love it.
So this is a great example of a super interesting usage of Monday. And when Marie and I started the company, We actually met with a lot of managers from different industries just to understand how people manage their day-to-day. And it was interesting because everybody was using some sort of software. But when we really dug deep and did user interviews, we found out that everybody had a secret spreadsheet that they were using to manage their processes, to manage their teams. And we were wondering, like, why would you use a spreadsheet for that? I mean, spreadsheets are originally used for calculation and doing things that require functions and other complex stuff. What would you manage a process within a spreadsheet? So the reaction was always, we want to have control. We want to manage our lives or our teams or anything you like in a very specific way. And what spreadsheets gives us is a way to structure data, but also the ability to change it and customize it as I like. And if tomorrow I want to change something in the way the data is structured, I can do that. So it basically gave people two things. One is a way to structure data and save it, but also control. And we came with this notion of we want to give people that control. It doesn't make sense that in 2015 when we started, and now obviously people need to work with what we call rigid software that was built in a very specific way, very specific structure. And if it doesn't exist in a structure that the software created, you have nothing to do with it. So we wanted to empower people. We wanted people to build whatever makes sense to them. Whatever structure they need, whatever process they want to model, whether it's producing a podcast or acquiring a company, doing M&A, doing a deal flow for investors, whatever you might think, everything is a process. And more than that, people often think about, when they think about productivity, they think about projects and tasks. Life is much more complex than that. On our day-to-day, we don't run projects. Producing a podcast is much more of a process. So what a lot of people are doing is basically running a process. But the interesting part was that we had no idea how people will use the platform because we just gave people Lego bricks and we know what they're going to build with it. And the amount of use cases was mind-blowing. We now have more than 200 verticals of different use cases. So anything from what you've mentioned of producing a podcast or writing a book all the way to building airplanes, running a hotel, managing a sales pipeline, manage HR onboarding process. I have so many exotic examples of what people do with Monday. And I'm so excited about it because I have no idea what it takes to produce a podcast or to build an airplane. But the fact that our users do have and they implement that on top of Monday is mind-blowing. And it's so exciting for us.
We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. Are you ready for change? Or maybe you're already in a season of expansion. As we embrace this new decade, are you ready to take action on your own Why Not Now idea? Maybe that means starting the company, launching the podcast, writing the book, or doing more public speaking, injecting your why into what you are doing. At the end of the day, that is exactly what creates connection. And connections convert. My life work is to help guide women through this very stage in their life. I do this through the Renegade Brand Bootcamp. It truly is the career love of my life. The reason I love this program so much is because I'm able to create a mosaic, a collection of like-minded, like-hearted, driven women who come together to level up. They learn the renegade mentality directly from me, and I share everything I've learned over the past 20 years in business. It's equal parts education, collaboration, accountability, and community. We are accepting applications for our 2020 program, and you are welcome to go check everything out about the program at renegadebrandbootcamp.com. And as a very first step, just sign up for my 5-day email series. I uncover all of the questions about the bootcamp and help you understand if it's right for you. We've had some incredible women come through the program, and you will hear from them as well. You can check out the curriculum, the structure, the vibe, and everything in between. Many years ago, I went to Mark Cuban and asked him for investment advice. I thought I was going to get some real estate or stock market type of advice. Instead, he said, invest in yourself, invest in your own growth, invest in yourself, bet on yourself. This is the best ROI you will ever find. If you're at that point where you are ready to take action, head to renegadebrandbootcamp.com.
Okay, let's talk about transparency for a moment. And I don't want to skip over the growth you've experienced. I mean, 2014, 15, and the rapid scale. And I think these numbers are actually outdated even because they're from the beginning of this year, but feel free to correct me. I mean, 100 million annual recurring revenue. I think you're well over 400 employees now. My number says 350, but 90,000 companies. I mean, $234 million raised. It's just in less than 5 years. Holy buckets. Okay, so we'll talk about transparency, and then I want to talk about kind of just your personal world and the impact this growth has had on you as the face of the brand, or one of the faces. Those numbers are incredible. It just, getting to know your team too, I've just been so pleasantly surprised about with being kind of able to interface with your culture. The transparency is key for you. Will you tell me a little bit about that? And then I'd love to hear about the time someone accidentally posted some numbers on social media. So when you say transparency is a value of the company, you are serious about it. What does that mean?
Yeah, yeah. So transparency has been a big part of our DNA since literally day one. I remember that day that we made a decision. We were 7 people in the office, and we made the decision that we want to be a transparent company, and that basically means that every information about the company, every metric, every number, from what's our revenue numbers to how much customers we have to revenue retention to all the way to how much money we have in the bank, how much we burn each month, how much it costs us to run the office. Anything you think about is transparent to everybody. We have one exception, which is people's salaries, which we consider to be a private thing. But apart from that, every metric, every number is transparent and available to everybody in the company. We also don't mind sharing numbers outside. So this is a big part of our philosophy. So just to give you an updated status. So we're 600 people right now with over 100,000 paying companies using our product. And our annual revenue is over 170 million. So this is our current state. Yeah. And I feel that, I want to explain the reason behind why we chose to be a transparent company. So there's a bunch of reasons. I think the first one is I feel that in companies that only management knows what's going on is really flawed. And for us, the fact that everybody knows all the numbers and all the metrics, it just helps get everybody to push the company forward, because everybody knows what's impacting the bottom line, what's making the company go. It just makes everybody more aware and understand how what they do affect the company. But I would say more than that, I feel that I've seen so many situations of other companies where things don't go well. And in every company, there's a period that things don't go well. But then only a selective, small group of people know that this is the situation. Usually only C-level executive or VPs. And then they try to deal with it. And a few months later, they communicated to the company, and then it's a big crisis. For us, I feel transparency protects us more than anything, because we deal with things in real time. We can't hide behind any numbers or anything because everybody knows everything. And it's not always convenient, but we have to deal with problems and kind of face the truth and try to find solution quickly. And I feel this builds resilience in the team and just makes everybody stronger, because everybody experienced kind of the roller coaster ride together, and just great ownership and a feeling of togetherness for everybody in the company. And on a last note, I would say that, I've worked in companies before where I had a lot of responsibility on my shoulders, but I just didn't know if the company is successful or not. Did we have a good quarter or not? And I didn't understand how come management didn't trust me. with the numbers, with just knowing those figures. And we wanted to create a different feeling for the people in the company. Our message to people is we trust you. We trust you with our marketing budget. We trust you with our R&D and our servers. So we trust you with everything else. So I think this is a very strong message to everybody in the company.
I love this. It's a sense of alignment. It seems like everybody would be, we're all on the same page. There's built-in alignment and empowerment, but then I imagine to know the impact you're making too, in any different division of the company, you can see as a team the impact, and that I would assume brings loyalty. A lot of your vibe and just the culture reminds me, a mentor of mine is Tony Hsieh, the CEO of Zappos, and he has a very transparent kind of philosophy and that openness. It's almost like open sourcing everything, right? You do that within Monday, and you've democratized kind of software by allowing us as customers to move the Lego bricks, but you're doing this with numbers with your team and publicly. So there was a time when did they take a screenshot and they posted it on Facebook or something of your numbers?
Yeah. So that specific event, so we basically made the decision to be a transparent company. We communicated to our board of directors, which was mainly our investors. And, they said, okay, it didn't sound like a big deal. And then I remember specifically one occasion where one of the people in the team actually took a photo of one of our dashboards. It shows everything, our revenue numbers, how many customers we have, our signups numbers, everything you can think about, all the main metrics in the company. And he posted it into Facebook. And yeah, and we were totally okay with it, just for the record. I'm totally fine with people taking photos of our dashboards. We have 4 floors here in the office in Tel Aviv, and we have over 150 televisions per floor. So everybody that's coming for an interview or just to visit us can see all our numbers and metrics. But put it on Facebook, it's kind of next level, I would say. And I got a call from one of our investors who is a friend of that specific person on Facebook, and he asked me. I saw this photo. You guys are sharing all your numbers. What are you doing? Your competitors will know your numbers, and that's it. And I remember that specific conversation because I follow up with a question of, so what? Let's think about it for a second. If our numbers are good and we're a successful company, then they're going to see it, and that's it. And if things don't go well and we're not doing well, guess what? The problem is not the dashboard. The problem is with the company itself. So I don't think there's any impact on us, on our competitors, or anybody else on the market with the fact that we are sharing our numbers. If anything, I think this is an empowering place to show you're self-confident, that you're not hiding behind anything, that you're willing to share information and numbers outside, and you're confident enough that next year, the year after, and so on, the numbers will keep performing well. So I convinced that specific investor, and he said, okay. and that's it. We moved on. And since then, it became reality, and everybody in the company is sharing information outside. And another kind of interesting anecdote is that we have a lot of ways to preserve transparency. So I've mentioned those dashboards. We also have a internal BI system called BigBrain, and we also send a daily SMS. So every morning, everybody in the company gets a daily SMS of what happened yesterday with our numbers. And not a lot of people know this, but also our investors get the same SMS every morning. So they get the same SMS. They have access to our dashboards in BigBrain, our BI system. And this has been a huge game changer for us. The fact that our investors see on a daily basis all of our numbers, all the movements, it just creates so much trust and transparency, not just between us and the company, but also between the company and the board. So this has also been a great, thing that came out of this transparency.
Oh my gosh, that's huge. I hope what a cool standard to hopefully be setting, but to get a daily text message with progress and updates, what a way to start the day of, okay, it's kind of like the stock market almost, right? Like you log in and it's like, okay, where are we? But it, of course, I think there's a sense of motivation and empowerment, and you're on a daily basis. You're that transparency message is coming through. That's so fascinating. I love that. Okay, let's talk about you for a little bit here in this ride you've been on. I mean, even looking at the numbers I had from earlier this year from one of your conferences and now, I mean, we're seeing huge growth. I imagine the pandemic, I mean, first of all, it seems like there's such a craving for people to stay connected, work together, be in sync with teams. Um, Looks like that's for business. That's been an interesting scenario you're in. How are you dealing with the growth? And I imagine at times it's overwhelming. That's how can it not be?
I mean, I don't know, to be honest, because I mean, and the way I think about it, that it's not me, it's the people in the company. I don't feel like I've personally achieved anything because I see all the hard work that everybody in the company is doing. So for me, it kind of feels the same company like 5 years ago. As weird as it may sound, it just feels the same thing. Things have changed. For me specifically, obviously, when we started the company, I used to write code. And 2.5 years ago, they stopped me from writing any more code because I would push code into production and couldn't maintain it. So I just created a lot of bugs in production. So they don't give me access anymore. So, my day-to-day have definitely changed. I've learned to work through managers and trying to thinking a lot about culture and people's dynamic and how to motivate people, how to push everybody towards the same goal. It's been a lot of learnings for me. And I've never done this before. I've never built a company that big. I've never managed so many people. But I feel one of the things that really kind of helped me feel that nothing can stop us is the fact that the team is so strong. Like everybody, everywhere that I look around, I see talented people. I see people who are motivated. I see people who love challenges and love solving problems. So it gives me a lot of confidence that, whatever we're going to face in the future, we have the capability to deal with it. And that, when I alone in my bed at night, this is, one of the things that really kind of keep me relaxed and just feeling that we can deal with almost anything just because of the team we have.
What a strong sense of leadership that I'm picking up there. It's incredible to hear that, and just how that's clearly your approach has served you well. And yeah, what's one thing that you find yourself learning over and over?
I would say finding the right balance is one of those things that I keep learning. And it's in many aspects of finding the right balance. It might be in personal life, it might be in pushing the company too hard, or going through a period where we need to push harder. There's a lot of periods where I feel I'm overstressed or I need to find the right balance. And I feel that specifically in those situations, kind of the default go-to is, it's not the right time. It's not the right time to take more time for myself. It's not the right time to focus on my well-being. But it's the other way around. In those specific times, you need to focus on those things that make you feel well, because a person who is not balanced is not in a good position. And it's one of those things that I keep learning over and over again. And it applies not only to me, but also for the company. We need to celebrate successes and face failures at the same time, in the same quantity. We can only have one and not the other. So I feel one thing that I keep learning and keep kind of trying to implement is finding the right balance in everything in life.
It's a biggie for sure. I think especially as an entrepreneur, and it's like kind of a groove, I think sometimes a rhythm, and there will be times where you're just, the cymbals they're louder for right now, be it like the cymbals in the band or the symphony, because of the season it's in. As you think of productivity and time management, efficiency, what are some of your own, other than Monday.com, of course, what are some of your own hacks? Like, how do you manage your day and tips and tricks that you might have?
Well, I have kind of a weird answer to that, because I'm not a huge believer in self-optimization. I think a lot of people are looking for that secret sauce, wake up at 5 a.m., do a workout for an hour, drink that black coffee afterwards or whatever. And, all those things are great. But at the end of the day, I feel that the biggest progress, the biggest impact that I've always made in the company, or I've seen other managers do, is just taking a step back and kind of trying to rethink what we're trying to do and try to take a different approach. And it didn't came from any kind of optimization that we've done. On the contrary, it's about, just taking a step back and try to rethink. And sometimes you just change the playground and everything changes in a minute. So, it's a lot of things that I do kind of in the day-to-day and how I run meetings and other things. But I think the biggest productivity tip that I always give is, wherever you feel stuck or something is inefficient, try to go back to the roots of what am I trying to solve, and is there another approach we can take in order to do so? And I found this is kind of the best tip that I always have on just making yourself more efficient or your team more efficient.
I like that, the reframe and taking a step back and change the playground. That's so good. You mentioned that you started coding when you were, 8 years old, and clearly there's a passion there. As you've grown the company and your role has shifted and the team has kicked you out of writing code, have you found just kind of a craving for that original passion, or do you find other ways to fulfill it? Because I think that's one thing for entrepreneurs. Sometimes our zone of genius is where it starts, and then, we start realizing, we're doing other things. It's not exactly, the original passion. So how are you dealing with that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I enjoy writing code, but what I found is that I even enjoy more building products. So building product is my real passion. Writing code is a way to do that. So the way I kind of practice this today is that I try to think about everything as a product. The company is a product. The dashboards that we build are a product. So what's the best user interface for doing that? What's the best user interface for building a scalable culture? So I just try to kind of think everything in the framing of how can this be a good product for us as a company, for us, for our investors, for the management team, and kind of using the same strength and the same passion that I have, just implementing it in kind of different aspects of the business, if it makes sense.
Absolutely. No, that makes sense. It's kind of like how you just answered, of going back into what was the original, like building product, and the coding was a way to do that. But that was a tactic. And I just thought of one more case study that I know that I'm not the first to do this, but I'm working with your team to kind of figure out the best way to optimize it is social media content calendar. So I've been using Monday for that and building within your tool. And I could tell you, as someone who was pretty early to adopt in 2005, 2006, social media for business and grow, this has been a solution that I've been looking for like 12, 13 years. So that to me is exciting, like how creative we can get with things that, in my past company, we had clients that we'd be using these clunky spreadsheets and it was just not efficient and no one was connected on the same page, and it was back and forth and waiting for client approval and stuff. And now it's so nice to have everything in one place. So whether you're a team of 1 or 2 or, 30,000, I think that's what's so cool about Monday is it's still useful at all these different sizes. It's just, yeah. So I have a few rapid fire questions for you as we wrap up here. All right, here we go. So what keeps you up at night?
My little daughter.
Oh, how old is she?
So I have 2 daughters. One is 5 years old, and the other one is 1 year old. So she still wakes up at night sometimes. So that's the thing, I would say.
I completely understand. I have a 1-year-old too. Oh, that's awesome. 2 girls. Pirates or ninjas? Who is tougher and why?
Wow. I would say ninjas.
Okay.
Just more clever, I would say, using more clever techniques to get the upper end.
Okay, fair enough. As far as things you've read recently, whether it's an article or a book, is there anything that you found very interesting?
I just recently read a book about taking ownership. Don't remember the specific name of it. It was written by two Navy SEALs. I don't really read kind of military books, but they talk about management, but just experiencing what they went through in their Army service. And it was just amazing to see how they think about taking ownership and just making everybody understand that it's up to them to make something successful or not.
Very cool. We've had a Navy SEAL on the show, and I think there's so much to be learned in business about the operations. And I know you were in the military as well. And then, final question, if you were to go back to that 24-year-old self when you're first starting your first company, what advice would you give him?
Wow. I would go back and say to myself, okay, just getting started. Next week, you're going to launch this product into production and get user feedback and then decide what to do next, and not spend the next 9 months writing code and building an infrastructure for something that nobody's going to use. I had to find about this after week 1 and then iterate on that rather than just wait so long.
What good advice. I mean, people listening right now, you're going to save them and they're going to be able to leapfrog that 9 months that you've spent. Hopefully, customer feedback loop. Thank you so much for your time. It's a joy to hear from you, to learn from you, and I really appreciate you sharing your wisdom and time and product. It's been such a solution. And if people want to follow along the journey, it doesn't appear that you're super active on social media. Correct me if I'm wrong. But is there a place that you would send them?
Actually, I do. I've decided in the past, I think it already 7 months, to start writing. So I've been posting a bunch of blog posts on our blog. So I think this is the best way to kind of read into our minds and see what we're up to. If you're interested, so it's money.com/blog if you want to read more.
Oh, that's perfect. Thank you. Well, thank you again, and we'll be following along the growth.
Thank you so much, Amy.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening to the show. Hit me up on social media to let me know what you think. I'm at Amy Jo Martin on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And I want to hear your Why Not Now moments so I can share them on the show. Just send me a note to whynotnow@amyjomartin.com. For show notes and other offers, you can visit amyjomartin.com/whynotnow. And while you're there, don't forget to sign up for my email newsletter for exclusive content and announcements. A big thanks to Rock Salt Music for all of the tunes by the talented John Coggins, and of course a hat tip to Richard Brewer for editing and producing the show. I'll see you next time, and until then, why not now?